Do you ever feel like manifestation is just another thing on your to-do list that you don't have time for? Like your spiritual practice is something that you have to do? Honestly, you're not alone because I felt that way too. Something that's really changed my relationship with manifestation is blending it into my lifestyle so that no matter what I'm doing, I'm also manifesting. I call this manifestation as a lifestyle, and it's single handedly made the entire manifestation journey more enjoyable for me. And I've seen my desires show up with a lot more ease. Manifesting as a lifestyle has made manifestation go from feeling like a task to something I just naturally do because it's who I am. If you'd like to learn more about this, I've created a step by step guide for you. I'll link it in my show notes so you can check it out. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Affirmation Addict podcast. Today's episode is all about your fear of failure. I've noticed that a lot of people I interact with are just scared of messing up. And I think that's a really unfair reason to not do something, not take certain actions. So today we are diving into overcoming your fear of failure. I hope you enjoy. You're listening to the Affirmation Addict podcast with Payal Agarwal. This podcast will teach you about the power of affirmations while making manifestation easy and accessible for you in order to enhance your spiritual consciousness. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to dive into today's episode. Actually, wait, before we get started, I wanted to check with you. Have you heard about my new app? It's called Affirm It, and it's your one-stop shop for all things affirmations, manifestation, and self-healing. I really have been wanting to create something for you that truly empowers you to realize that you genuinely have everything you need within you. You don't need me. You don't need any other coaches. This app genuinely has everything you need to get that life that you've been trying to manifest. And it has gentle daily reminders, guided audio affirmations, sleep affirmations, affirmation reminders, and so much more good information, good energy, and so many things that I know will help you manifest your dreams. Because I'm so grateful for you, I'm actually offering you a free 7-day trial. And this is a genuine 7-day trial. That means you don't have to type in your credit card. You won't be automatically charged. There's no ads, and you get complete access to the app as if you've already subscribed to it. So if you do want to learn more about the app, head over to affirmation-addict.com/app, or if you're ready to dive in, head over to the iTunes App Store and search for Affirm It. The Android version will be coming soon, and as soon as it's ready, I'll be sure to let you know. Now we can officially dive into today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Affirmation Addict podcast. So before I dive into all things failure, I really just want to say thank you to all of you who supported me for the Align Your Mind experience, for all of the people who joined. If you're listening, I love you. And for all the people who didn't join, I also love you. And just thank you for even considering it and letting me share my thoughts on what I've created. I really appreciate just any sort of support, whether it was just reading through all my posts and sending me good energy. I really do appreciate every single one of you. And I didn't podcast record during that time because my energy was actually a little different this time. I was more productive, more excited, and less fearful during this launch than I normally am. So I decided not to do any podcasts because I didn't feel like it was necessary, and I wanted all my energy to go into the launch. So that's why I was offline for 2 weeks, just doing the launch and the Align Your Mind experience. But other than that, everything is going great. I'm so excited to share one of my most insane manifestation stories coming up. I will be sharing that within the next few weeks. We manifested our dream condo, and it was absolutely not in our favor. So I really do think there was some huge learning lessons for me about surrendering and trusting, which I will be sharing with you guys. But today we are talking all about failure. I get so many interactions, and I get a lot of questions about what happens if I fail and how to overcome failure. And it really got me thinking just about failure and the idea around failure and why that is so strong in so many many of our lives. So I'm going to dive in and just help you think through what it means to fail and help you identify what your triggers are to fail and why you're so scared of failing, if that resonates with you. And so the first thing I want to bring up is, okay, we have this fear of failure. We're assuming all of us are scared of failing at something, whether it's you're scared of making a fool out of yourself, not getting a job and someone else getting that job. Failure has a lot to do with our definitions of failure. And I think that's a big thing to understand is, what does failure even mean? We have to sit and define failure before we're so scared of it. And from my understanding, most failure kind of falls into a few categories. One is making a fool of yourself. So for some people, if you are humiliated or you're embarrassed or you're not socially validated, that is a failure. The other one is not meeting expectations. So whether that means you don't get a job or you are not good enough and you don't get picked on a team for something, or you're unable to get in a relationship with someone you really like because you might not be on the same page as them. Some people define that as a failure. And another one is just literal failure, that the most plain definition, which is you just do not pass. So passing an exam, passing a job interview, passing a test or a driving test or immigration. A lot of those types of more legal stuff, I feel like, is what triggers a lot of failure. Like, oh, I wasn't able to accomplish this. But in my opinion, failure is just an opinion. Not to be repetitive, but I believe that failure is just your version of it. Some people will consider not landing their dream job as a failure, but they get the second best job, but it's still a failure. It's, to me, that definition of failure is honestly just lack of appreciation. For some people, getting a 95 on an exam is a failure instead of 100. It's just, you have to understand what your definition of failure is, because I think it's so overrated. And it's not to say your feelings aren't valid. I just think it's very hyped up in society that everybody has a failure point, and that once you cross that point, you are a failure. You have messed up. And I truly, truly think that is so unfair as a society to live by, because failure is just an opinion. It's literally a perception. For me, failing, I don't even have a definition of failure because it's not in my vocabulary anymore. I believe nothing is a failure. Even if I don't meet my goals, that doesn't mean I failed. And I think a lot of people don't have that realization that failure does not have to even exist in your life. It's genuinely what you want it to be. So instead of defining failure, you can say there's no such thing as a failure. Sure, I might not have met my goals, or I might not have accomplished what I was looking for, but that does not mean I failed. I think we've made failure this huge word. It's like a black cloud hanging over some people, where we're just so scared to take any action out of fear of failing. And I think that it's so unfortunate that we have this big fear that there's so many things that we want to do, and we're just scared we're going to mess up, or we're scared we're going to fail. And a lot of people just, all that comes down to is lack of self-trust. When people are scared of failing, that means that you don't trust yourself. And I want to repeat that again. If you are scared of failing, if you are scared of messing up, all you're scared of and all you're experiencing is lack of self-trust. You are basically fearing that you don't have the capability to do that, and that's where it comes down to. Failure has nothing to do with meeting certain standards or passing certain expectations. Failure is genuinely all about your relationship with you and the way you give yourself credit. And I don't understand why so many people in our life and so many people around us have made failure almost like a power word. It's like, if you don't succeed, you fail. There's no in between. And I don't think that's fair. And I want to remind you that you get to choose your definition. You get to choose if you have a failure or if you have a success or you just have an accomplishment. You don't have to have a failure. It's not that failure is always going to happen. That's not true. I personally think the opposite is true. I'm choosing my belief that success is inevitable. I'm not believing that failure is inevitable. I'm choosing to believe that success and my success is inevitable because I trust myself and I trust the process, not because I have all these amazing capabilities, but I know that whatever situation I'm in, I'm going to do my best, and that's what success means to me. So coming back to the first question I asked you, what is a failure? I gave you the general definition, but to me, a failure is literally non-existent. It is not in my vocabulary, and you, while you're listening to this podcast, can choose to feel this way as well. And now I want to ask you, if you do have this fear of failure, why is it so bad to fail? I honestly do not have an answer to this if I'm answering from my perspective, but so many of us feel that failing is so horrible. Like we are at the bottom of the bottom. We're at the lowest of our lows if we fail. But that's not true. If you fail and you mess up and it doesn't work, so what? That's it. And you can have that perspective. Then I really encourage you to ask yourself, why is it so bad to fail? What does it mean if I fail? Because no one can identify and help you overcome this fear of failure except you. So these questions I'm giving you, I'll repeat at the end so you can journal through them. But for some people, if I fail, it means I'm not good enough. So for some other people, if I fail, it means that I can never accomplish anything else. For some people, if I fail, it means that no one's going to love me. And so listen to what I said. All of those fears of failure result in just us not feeling good enough. Once again, full circle, it's coming back to self-confidence. And I think it's super interesting to realize that our self-confidence and our perception of ourself is so telling that we create so many illusions in our mind to avoid coming to terms with the fact that, hey, maybe I don't have that much self-confidence, but I'd rather work on it. We're honestly so scared sometimes of acknowledging that I don't have the self-confidence in this area. And I have lack of self-confidence in so many areas. And I know that I'm feeling lack of self-confidence because I procrastinate in those situations. I'm holding back in those situations. So one example for me is making videos. I get really uncomfortable making videos sometimes because it's just a process. It takes a lot of effort and I feel like it's going to mess up or not enough people will watch it. Not enough people will like it. And once again, that is all my insecurities of just people judging me. That's all I'm really scared of. And I'm making the fact if people judge me, I'm declaring that as a failure. And that is what I think a lot of us don't realize because we associate anything that's not smooth sailing as a failure, but that's not true. You have to understand what triggers those fears, then you can start to rework them. So I want you to take a second, whether it's now or after the podcast episode, and ask yourself, why am I so scared of failing? What does it mean if I fail? Does that make me a worse person? No. Does that make me unworthy? No. Does that make me phony? No. Does that mean I'm dumb? No. So ask yourself any of those questions. What does it mean if I fail? And as I'm saying this to you, most of us have this fear. Most of us have some of the thoughts I've said. And yes, the answer is obviously no. But when you declare it and speak it out with yourself, that's when it makes a big difference. It's easy in your head to, well, logically, yes, but I don't feel like that in my heart. That's because you're so scared to express it. I really encourage you to write it down in your journal or even talk out loud or have a conversation with a family member or a friend of yours who you can talk to and just talk through these questions. Because in any way, the most you express yourself is the way you're going to be able to hear your own thoughts through writing or through your thoughts or through conversation. That's where it's really amazing because so many of us leave the gap of, okay, you think you listen to the podcast episode, you got my journal questions, but then you don't take that action step. You don't take the action because it's a little inconvenient to write it down and actually work through the questions. Or you don't take the time to just sit for a few minutes without scrolling, without doing anything else, and actually just ask yourself, why am I so scared to fail? And when I used to have a big fear of failure, I used to ask myself, and I could never come up with an answer. It was just like, I'm scared of being embarrassed. I'm scared of making a fool of myself. I'm scared of just messing up. And it's not a bad thing. If you can redefine your relationship with messing up, That just means you tried. Messing up doesn't mean you did something wrong. Messing up just means it didn't work out and you have to try again next time. The whole cycle of life, I believe, is all about being comfortable with that discomfort. Messing up is also really uncomfortable for most of us. And if you can create peace and comfort around the idea that not everything will go exactly how you plan, but at least you're trying and have fun through that process, that will start to eliminate that fear of failure for you. That will allow you to have the courage to take those big steps and do things that you don't know how it's going to turn out, but at least you're trying and experiencing it. A lot of the things I realize is that so many people are so focused and on the result and on the end result. The journey has no impact. The journey doesn't matter at all. The journey just has to be done. But what if you started to spend more time enjoying that process? Even if you mess up, even if the end result is not what you expected, at least you had fun during that journey. And I know this sounds so cliche, but imagine actually feeling that way. That would be pretty awesome. Rather than pushing through a presentation, giving that presentation with a shaky voice because you're scared of public speaking and messing up, and then you just immediately, that whole 2 weeks of your preparation was just 2 horrible weeks. What if you could enjoy building that presentation and you give it your best and that's it? That's possible. And it's no magic formula. It's just a choice that you have. Once you hear me, it might sound a little resistant. You might feel a little resistant because it sounds too good to be true, but maybe listen to this again with an open heart and with an open mind that maybe I can overcome this. Maybe I am able to feel more peace and feel more excitement while in the process of things rather than focusing on if the result is going to be a success or a failure. I think a lot of us go through that process, especially when we're on tight deadlines or there's a lot of pressure on something. We tend to just try and get it done as quick as possible so that it doesn't mess up and you can just get it over with. But that's so opposite of what I know your goal is, because I know you are one of my listeners. You are part of me. You're part of my community. I know that that's not your goal. Your goal is not to just rush through and get things done. It's to just feel good. That's all you're searching for, is to feel good. And I know you can choose to feel that way once you start to have these conversations with failure and around the fear of failure. Like, what does it actually mean? Why is it so important to me? What does it mean if I do succeed? Like, why is it so bad to fail, but so great to succeed? Why is it not just, I did my best, I gave it my all, and that's good enough? Like, that can be good enough. Societally speaking, for some people and the way we're wired, at the moment, that's not good enough. But I promise you, if you reframe your relationship with you just putting your best foot forward, being good enough, and you being proud of that, you will immediately start to succeed by other people's definitions. And it's kind of crazy how that works out. And let me repeat that to you. If you on your own become comfortable and become proud of just putting your best foot forward and doing everything that makes sense to you, you will become a success in everybody else's eyes, which kind of will fill that validation that you're unknowingly looking for. You'll receive that the more you just focus in on you and start to forget about everybody else's opinions and thoughts. We have such a tendency to blow up everybody else's opinions and think that our opinions and feelings are so irrelevant that we just ignore what our bodies and what our minds are actually trying to guide us to do. Your body, your mind, your guide, your highest self, they're going to take you in the best direction that you need to be in. And I encourage you to, instead of being scared with whatever other people might think, whatever the results might be, whatever that external factor is, focus in on the internal factor that's guiding you through this process. Because the more in tune you are with you, the more beautiful that process will feel for you. And most likely, the more beautiful those results will be for you as well. So I want to do a quick little recap on the few questions I covered. So if you want, take a second, pull out your notes on your phone to jot down these questions or get a piece of paper. And I encourage you, if you do have a fear of failure, ask yourself a couple questions. The first one is, what is failure? What does failure mean? The second one is, what does it mean if I fail? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for other people who look at me? The third question is, what happens if I succeed? What does that mean? And the fourth question is, what is my new definition of failure? And what is my new relationship with failure? So those are the 4 questions I really invite you to go through and ask yourself, why is it so scary to fail? What does it mean if I fail? What happens if I succeed? And what's my new definition or relationship with failure? It's seriously as simple as just asking yourself these few questions and working through them in your mind, allowing yourself to fully express your thoughts. And if you have very strong definitions for what it means to fail and what it means, challenge that. Play devil's advocate with yourself. If you failing means that you're unworthy, then ask yourself another, why? Why does it mean that I'm unworthy? Says who? Keep asking yourself questions until you find an answer that makes sense to you, that gives you peace that this is how I want to feel. Because the more you keep going through the process and asking yourself these questions, the more of a relationship you'll build with your inner knowing. Our higher selves don't believe in failure. A lot of failure comes from ego because it's all about comparison. It's all about being better than the other person. And it's all about survival mode. That's all ego based. But higher self has no such definition or awareness of failure. Your higher self is all about compassion, putting your best foot forward, doing what feels right to you. That's what your higher self is really egging you on to do. And the more you ask yourself and work through these questions and be transparent and radically honest with yourself, the more clarity you're going to get. A lot of the times we start journaling and we don't like what we're writing. We don't like hearing our innermost thoughts because we know they're not the best, but that's not a bad thing. You are working on your innermost thoughts, and that's the most beautiful thing. Don't judge yourself through this process. I invite you to be super kind with yourself, and just as a third person, just let yourself be and watch yourself. No judgments, no good judgments, no bad judgments. Just be and experience through this process without having any expectations. And another thing I wanted to say about failure, just to remind you, failure is just an opinion. It's just a definition. And I want you to remember that your failure might be somebody else's success, and somebody else's failure might be your success. And I hope that really emphasizes the fact that failure is just an opinion. It is just a perception. And I think a lot of us have so much energy towards failure and avoiding failure that we allow it to become a really easy excuse. We start to let failure take over us. We start to let it dictate so many of our decisions that I would rather be safe, so let me not do this. We become so comfortable feeling safe. We become so comfortable doing what we're doing, even if we're not doing what's best for us, that we avoid making changes because we don't know if we're going to fail or succeed. That's the biggest thing I really hope you can take away from this, is that you start to stop letting failure and fear of failure being your excuse to get out of things. I encourage you to get uncomfortable. I encourage you to feel weird. I encourage you to embrace the discomfort. Like when you first start saying affirmations, you're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to do this right. That's fear of failure. That fear and that questioning of, I don't know if I'm going to do this right, is what fear of failure is. And once again, to me, what it all comes down to is lack of self-trust. So I have a few affirmations for you guys if you are experiencing this fear of failure. So I have 3 affirmations for you. 1, I have full confidence in my ability to accomplish whatever I set my mind to. 2, it is impossible for me to fail. And 3, my success is inevitable. You can write these down. You can repeat them. You can add them into the Affirmit app. You can do whatever you want with these. But if you are experiencing or have experienced this fear of failing and you notice it taking over your life, try the journal questions I gave you. Try repeating these affirmations. And I really hope that this can help you, because it's not your responsibility to be scared. It's your responsibility to express yourself as fully and clearly as possible. There's no such thing as failure in my book, meaning I fully believe that you cannot fail. I fully believe that I cannot fail. And now it's your turn to choose what your relationship is with failure. Have a beautiful day, and I love you. Mwah. Bye. So, how did you like today's episode? I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it. And before you leave, I wanted to just say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for spending some time with me. If this episode or any of my content has ever inspired you, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could leave a review in the iTunes podcast app and just share this with someone you care about. The more you guys leave reviews and share this with people, the more I am able to create more content for you, and that's what fuels me and keeps me going. I am so genuinely grateful for the time we shared today, and until next time, I'm sending you lots of love and lots of healing energy. Bye!